Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Roddy John, and today we speak to James and Jacquelyn with Botanical Brewing. We talk all about making drinks with kava, hemp, kanna, and Delta 8. We even get a great tale of the Delta 8. This is such a fun interview. In case you were, obviously you listened to the kava culture episode. That episode actually probably should have come after this one. However, Botanical Brewing is also the owner of Kava Cultures, so we get to learn so much more about the Kava Culture background as well, and that and obviously what's happening with Botanical Brewing. So this is such a fun interview, and you get even more information coming up soon about them and Kava Culture. But speaking of getting even more information, you should sign up for our newsletter. You get even more information about our guests, you get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is James and Jacquelyn with Botanical Brewing. I would like to welcome to the show James and Jacquelyn with Botanical Brewing. How are y'all doing today?
We're doing great.
Yep, doing awesome.
Good. So I guess for people listening, kind of paint us a word picture. Where are you at? What's going on around you?
Well, we are a rapidly growing alcohol alternative company. We are basically the pioneers for what we get to do out here with kava, kratom, and other plant beverages. Basically just trying to set the standard in our industry and bring the best alcohol alternative products that we can to the market.
Yeah, we're located in Cape Coral, Florida, is our headquarters and brewery, and we will be having a newer, larger brewery soon out of state. It's a secret still, though, so we're not releasing it.
Just something people can start looking forward to.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I guess let's go back in time. How did Botanical Brewing Company begin?
I'm going to let James do it. He came on, and he is the master behind it all.
Well, so the idea started with Jacquelyn's sister, Caroline. She was somewhere where she couldn't have kava and kratom. She was at a regular bar, and she kind of wanted, something out there, and she had that idea, and they tried to do it for a little bit, and it just wasn't happening. And then one day Jacquelyn basically said, hey, do you think you can help us out with this? And came in and thankfully was able to figure it out. We started out just before COVID. It was a few weeks before COVID. And we're able to make the first product. And, basically when COVID hit, instead of giving up and shutting down, we kept pushing forward. We did what we could behind the scenes. We kept, everything going. And by the time everything let up here in Florida, we were taking off. We were supplying all of our bars. We started having inquiries from other wholesale customers, and it just really took off from there to the point where shortly after that, we had to get a facility, an actual facility, because that actually happened in the back of our Fort Myers Beach location. We brewed everything by hand in about 15 by 15 square foot area. It was pretty tight spot, yeah. But now we are in, around 4,000 square feet, including our storage space. And, we make it work, but we're growing rapidly. So it started there, and it's taken off to the point where, we're looking at it like, okay, how fast can we get this into here so we can be able to keep supplying the demand, because the demand is growing rapidly.
Right. Well, I mean, so I've been to multiple breweries where they also were very in tight, packed areas. How did you guys kind of work through that, for however long you did? Because, obviously I imagine it's, kind of roll this in or at this time, and then when you're not using it, get it out of the way. And so kind of how it's walk us through that.
There's definitely some of that going on. Yeah, Jacquelyn laughs because, I have to make do with the space that I have. I have a labeler that we used to have to roll out of the way to be able to set up prep tables, so on and so forth. Thankfully, the way that we differ from our traditional breweries is we don't have to wait for our product to be ready. So once we had it in the tank, at first there was a couple of them that we would have to let naturally settle to get the fibers to the bottom of the tank, kind of like what you do with brewing before you send it over to the bright tank. But with this, now everything is filtered going into the tanks. So we use traditional fermenter type tanks, but we don't ferment. So once it's in there and it's below that proper temperature, we can go ahead and start pushing CO2 into it, get it carbonated, and then send it in cans or send it into kegs. So thankfully, our turnover time is a lot faster. But, yeah, we do have to roll things in and out, move things around to make things work. But that's what you do, you know, when you're a startup and you're just rolling with it and you're making the best with what you got, and you're definitely appreciating every single upgrade that you get along the way.
So I'm going to make James listen to himself again with this podcast to when he's starting to ask me for more space. So we have a container outside now. He's like, can we have another container? We are going to be moving into a bigger facility, so he'll be like his dream facility. We've been crafting it on paper for a while, and so it'll be really fun to move into that. But even then, I mean, there's always, with the growth, there's always, room for getting squished again. That's kind of what we've seen is we get squished and we expand a little and then we expand and we expand.
That is growth.
That's the best thing about growth is that you grow to a certain length and then or a certain area and then you're like, oh, okay, well, we have already outgrown this. How did this happen? And then you grow again. I mean, that's, hopefully that's what everybody's goal is to eventually just continue to grow to where you're to the point you're like, oh, well, let's just keep doing it and see how much bigger we can get.
Yeah, that's basically the plan. Just keep packing it in until we can't pack it in anymore, and then we need a bigger one. We need to expand. But, hopefully this next one is big enough that I can be in it for at least a year and a half before it gets too tight.
A year and a half.
The rate of growth of this is big. Like we're scratching the surface with it because we have a lot of people that want to bring us on a larger scale, but we have to be able to supply that. And,
right.
The second that we hit that bigger space, we're going to be able to supply that. And I see exponential rate of growth because it is taking off across the country. Kava, Kratom, Kana, all these different alcohol alternatives that are hitting the market, all the hemp lines, they are huge out there. They're growing every day, and there's new things coming out. And we don't just kind of roll with what's out there too. I'm always trying to figure out something different that we can create to be able to meet the needs of the consumer out there, not just kind of roll with what's coming out or what's available, but to make the newest thing, to be able to create something that's not out there that helps people with it. Because a lot of our stuff, people, they use it for the benefits that they get from it. It's not just to, like alcohol is trying to relax and dissociate. With this, there's a lot of different things that people utilize it for. So it's really cool what we get to do when it comes to that. And because of that, we are blowing up.
It's so good too, because like you said, you're giving people an alternative, and we're living in a time now where, people are becoming, maybe sober curious, if you will, when it comes to, and also reevaluating their relationship when it does come to alcohol in general. And, obviously more people are becoming more conscious and more, putting more an effort into what they're putting inside their bodies, as opposed to years past. It's just like, oh, okay, well, everyone's drinking that, so let's do that. And then, it just, unfortunately, the effects of just doing that did not work. And so people are just reevaluating what they are putting in their bodies. So, I mean, you touched on it already. You guys are dealing with kava and the kana. For those who don't know what those are, because some people think kava, they might think of the Spanish sparkling wine, but this is kava with a K. So I guess explain to people what the kava and the kana is.
Yeah, we get that all the time. People are like, oh, is that wine? Or they'll be like thinking kava and then they associate it with Java. Honestly, it's being that it's still newer to the market, it's obviously, misappropriated. They think it's one thing and it's something else. Kava is a root from the South Pacific, and it's used traditionally in cultures in that area for thousands of years. And it's actually very celebratory. It's very much looked at and revered at as this very special plant. It is related to the pepper plant, and they harvest these roots and they dry them and age them for years before they're ready to be ground up and made into these different drinks to be able to brew them. So it has a very relaxing effect. It also has a very social effect. It makes people kind of want to open up and talk. It reduces, a little bit of the tension going on there. It helps people to really kind of feel a little more relaxed and at ease in a social environment a lot of times. So people really like that because it hits the same receptors as alcohol would. So it kind of replaces it in more than one way. It's not just giving you something else to drink. It really, a lot of people have a lot of relief because of that. So that's the basics of kava. And with kratom, kratom is a leaf from the whole Indonesia area. It's related to the coffee plant, and it can have many different effects, anything from relaxing to a good mood boost or a little bit more energy and focus. And then there's a lot of other possible benefits to it. It's just the list goes on and on. There's still so much research they're doing on it. It's amazing every day what comes out when it comes to kratom. And people are becoming more aware of it. At first, there was a little bit of a stigma behind it because nobody knew what it was. And then the second that one person says something negative, everybody kind of hops on the bandwagon. But as more stuff comes out about it and all these doctors start getting behind it, people really realize, hey, there's some benefit to this. So there's many different benefits to that. And then Kana, we know as an empathogen. So it makes you feel like this empathy towards everything, this kind of love and kind of blissful feeling that it's really just, you feel at peace with everyone around you. It's a really cool plant. It comes from South Africa. It's a succulent, and they purify and isolate the mesembrine and the other active ingredients in it, and they send it over to us, nice, pure, cleaned up, and we're able to incorporate it in drinks. And that's one of my favorites to work with because it leaves virtually no background flavor. So we get to make pretty much anything you can absolutely think about. It's pretty cool when it comes to that. And then obviously the hemp line everybody's very familiar with, all your different alternatives to, cannabis when it comes to hemp. Those are widely popular and pretty fun to work with as well.
Yeah, I know here in Texas, a lot of the hemp stuff is becoming more popular, and like we talked about before we started here, you guys are also associated with the kava culture that is open here in the DFW area, and it looks like there's more locations opening as well. And around the country, there are so many locations as well. What's the reception been like? Because obviously things in Florida, as we saw during the pandemic, are much different than they are in the rest of the country. Obviously, same thing here in Texas. What's the reception been like, not only down there, but like everywhere else throughout the country? Because you already said that you had so many people wanting your product in there, but, size-wise and production-wise, you have to, give them what you can. But obviously, let us know what the reception's been like everywhere else.
Yeah, so the kava culture has grown since the pandemic. I think people are really wanting to connect. So our spaces are, and you'll see that when you head into that location, but the spaces are very community driven. So it's a spot to work from. It's a spot to hang out with your friends. It's a spot for people to take their little kids. It's a spot for, a student to come in with their grandma. So they're very all walks of life to, socialize in. And I think that was lacking after or during COVID, so it made people really start to want them more. Most of our expansion has actually come from people visiting Florida and going to a kava bar and going home to their home state and being like, I want this in my home state. So, they're like, they want their little piece of Florida there. So we have some in Ohio that are opening. We have Pennsylvania. We've got the Texas and more interest in Texas, South Carolina, Florida. We have, about 25 locations, but the other ones are all really mostly inquiries are across the country now. And with the hemp products, that's been really popular. And now with the Kana, that's also something that's taken off, because it's something that's all of our drinks give you a little bit of a plant buzz is what we call it. So it's not as much as alcohol, but it gives you a little boost. And so there's a big